Satellite technology is a wonderful thing. From space, we can stare down and look at the perimeter fences, huts, mine entrances, and even sites of mass graves. Good morning everyone. Myself, Professor Yeshudas Muthu, welcome you all for Day 5 of Tech Inside webinar series organized by IEEE DBCE Student Branch in association with IEEE Bombay Section. Today, we have amongst us our very own Dr. Varsha Turkar. Now I request Mr. Musab Sheikh, IEEE Student Branch Program Committee Lead, to kindly introduce the speaker for today's webinar.
Thank you, sir. And hello, everyone. This is Musab Sheikh. I am the program committee lead of the IEEE student branch of Don Bosco College of Engineering. I would like to introduce you all to our speaker for the day, Dr. Varsha Turkar. Dr. Varsha Turkar has a total experience of 23 years, which consists of 16 years of experience in teaching and 7 years of experience in the industry. She has published and presented 56 papers, out of which 23 are Scopus and DEC. He currently works as a professor and the head of department of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering at Don Bosco College of Engineering, Goa. Dr. Varsha Turkar has completed her Bachelor's in Engineering from Tadamul Shahani Engineering College, Mumbai, Master's in Engineering in Control Systems from VJIT Mumbai and a PhD from CSRE IIT Bombay. She is also currently working for the Indian Space Research Organization since the year 2010 as a researcher. Her research areas include microwave remote sensing, digital image processing, machine learning, and GIS. She is the reviewer of many reputed journals like IEEE, Taylor, Francis, and Springer as well. Now I request you, ma'am, to kindly take over the session.
Deliver this lecture under the Skill and Knowledge Enhancement Program of IEEE Bombay Section. My topic of presentation today is satellite image processing. Before going through satellite image processing, first we will see what remote sensing is. The overview of today's presentation will be as follows. First, we will see what is remote sensing, the advantages and disadvantages of microwave remote sensing. After that, we will see applications and types of microwave remote sensing. Then we will discuss about what is synthetic aperture radar and polarimetric synthetic aperture radar. At the end, we will discuss satellite image processing steps. So, what remote sensing is? Currently, you are watching my lecture on your monitor or on mobile. Your eyes are working as sensors which are not in physical contact with the monitor or a mobile device, but still can sense the information and perceive it remotely. Similarly, satellites can extract the information of target on the Earth's surface without being in physical contact with it. In literature, it is defined as it's an art and science of making measurements about an object or the environment without being in physical contact with it. The figure here shows different targets on the Earth's surface like grass, water bodies, forest, then trees, then bare soil, roads, buildings, etc. The sun is acting as a source of energy. The solar radiation is reflected by the object on the Earth's surface, which is received and processed by the satellite. Now you will think, why remote sensing? It's very difficult to collect the information of the Earth's surface manually. Satellites can cover large area periodically and at the same time. Information can be collected periodically as satellites can revisit the same location. Various frequencies can be used to acquire the data from the Earth's surface. Remote sensing started in mid-19th century using balloon. Later people started using kites with camera mounted on it. Now you are aware that we are using satellites and drones to capture the data. Okay, so the aerial photography we can do using both the techniques nowadays. There are two types of remote sensing techniques, passive and active remote sensing. In passive remote sensing, as shown in the figure on the left hand side, there is no artificial source of energy. In this, sun acts as a source of energy and the solar radiation reflected by the targets on the earth is received and processed by the satellite or a sensor. On the other hand, in active remote sensing, radar emits the electromagnetic spectrum which is reflected to radar from the target on the Earth's surface. You must have studied electromagnetic spectrum in physics. Few regions of electromagnetic spectrum are used for imaging. The digital image processing which we have in the curriculum covers only visible spectrum. All our mobile cameras works in visible spectrum. This is the band which can be perceived by human being. The remote sensing in this region is known as optical remote sensing. Along with visible spectrum, the imaging can be done in ultraviolet, near and mid infrared, thermal infrared, and micro regions of electromagnetic spectrum. As mentioned just now, optical remote sensing uses visible spectrum. All of you must be using Google Earth app. What is that? It shows optical images of Earth's surface along with some information. Cameras are used to capture the information. The problem in optical remote sensing are we cannot take images during night time as it needs sun which acts as a source of energy. The images gets affected by clouds, rain, fog, snow, smoke and smog, and it cannot penetrate soil, vegetation, snowpack and ice. Each target on the earth may not have unique signature. For example, vegetation. It's very difficult to classify one type of crop from another using optical remote sensing. Now we will see the advantage of microwave remote sensing over optical remote sensing. Microwave remote sensing is independent of sun energy, so can work during night time also. It can penetrate atmosphere in almost all weather conditions like cloudy, rainy, foggy, etc. So it is known as all weather and all season satellites. Microwaves are sensitive to the dielectric properties of target. It can classify targets based on dielectric properties. It can also be used to measure soil moisture. Microwaves are also sensitive to the surface roughness. Due to all these properties, microwave can give unique signature of the target on the Earth's surface. So by using microwave remote sensing, we can actually classify the type of vegetation, the type of crops and many other things. There are few disadvantages of microwave remote sensing. There is a complex interaction between microwaves and targets, and due to which the system becomes very difficult to understand. Speckle is a type of noise which is present in microwave data. Because of it, visual interpretation of data becomes difficult. Microwave remote sensing is a side-looking radar, so the topographic effects are visible, and to understand microwave remote sensing and to work with it requires lot of knowledge of mathematics. You must be aware what radar is. Radar stands for radio detection and ranging. It transmits pulses of microwave signals in the direction of target and records the strength of the received signal along with the time required to return it back. There are two types of imaging radar systems, spaceborne and airborne. In airborne, the sensor is attached to the aircraft as shown in the figure, and the spaceborne, the sensor is attached to the satellite. The effect of altitude is less in case of spaceborne as it is far away from the Earth's surface. Spaceborne radars are more stable compared to airborne radar. The advantage of airborne radar is it can acquire high resolution data from different look angles and look directions. There are different applications of imaging radar. It can be used in oceanography to study the bottom topography, wave forecasting, marine climatology. It can be also used for snow and ice monitoring, to map and monitor the use of land, forestry, and the agriculture area. The data can be used to update the thematic maps very frequently and cost effectively. It can be also used for flood monitoring, to study soil moisture, wetlands, and the surface movement caused by earthquakes. It can be also used for glacier advancement, and there are so many other applications in which this data can be used. Now we will see how actually microwave remote sensing works. The figure 1 shows the direction along the path of the radar is known as azimuth, and across the path of the radar is known as range. The resolution in both the directions should be very high to get proper information of the target. You must have studied that for a high resolution you need longer antenna. Will it be possible to send such a long antenna in space? The answer is no. So here also, to achieve very high resolution in azimuth, a very narrow beam is required. To get a very narrow beam, extremely long physical antenna is necessary. It is very difficult to build an antenna of several kilometers in length and operate from space. Therefore, synthetic aperture radar, which is also known as SAR, was developed to overcome the limitation of keeping long antenna in space. SAR systems use an antenna of much smaller physical dimensions which sends pulses from different positions as the platform advances, simulating a synthetic aperture by integrating the pulse echoes into a composite signal. This is shown in the figure 2. Here you can see the SAR is collecting the information of a sheet from different locations A, B, C and D. After acquiring the data, SAR will integrate it into a composite signal. Aperture means the opening used to collect the reflected energy that is used to form an image. In the case of camera, this would be the shutter opening. For radar, it is the antenna. SAR can provide better resolution than conventional real aperture radars. By proper post-processing, important information can be extracted from the high-resolution image acquired by SAR. The advantage of using SAR is that the spatial resolution is independent of platform altitude. There are few disadvantages of SAR. The viewing geometry of a radar results in certain geometric distortions on the resultant imagery due to its side-looking nature. The radar is fundamentally a distance measuring device. Slant range scale distortion occurs because the radar is measuring the distance to features in slant range rather than the true horizontal distance along the ground. This results in a varying image scale moving from near to far range. Although targets A1 and B1 are the same size on the ground, their apparent dimensions in slant range, that is A2 and B2, are different. This causes targets in the near range to appear compressed relative to the far range. So this is a near range, this is a near range, and this is a far range. Okay. Using trigonometry, ground range distance can be calculated from the slant range distance and platform altitude to convert to the proper ground range format. This conversion comparison shows a radar image in slant range display here, okay, where the fields and roads here are compressed and the same image converted to the ground scale display with the features in their proper geometric shape. Radar foreshortening and layover are two penalties which result from relief displacement. Figure 1 and 2 shows the foreshortening effect. When the radar beam reaches the base of a tall target like mountain, tilted towards the radar before it reaches the top of it, foreshortening will occur. Again, because the radar measures distance in slant range, the slope A to B will appear compressed and the length of the slope will be represented incorrectly, that is A dash to B dash. Okay, so depending on the angle of the hillside or mountain slope in relation to the incidence angle of the radar beam, the severity of foreshortening will vary. Maximum foreshortening occurs when the radar beam is perpendicular to the slope such that the slope, the base and the top are imaged simultaneously, C to D, as shown in the figure. The length of the slope will be reduced to an effective length of 0 in slant range, that is C dash D dash. Okay. The figure 2 shows the radar image of a steep mountain terrain with severe foreshortening effect. Okay. The foreshortened slopes appear as brighter features on the images. Now in figure 3 and 4, you can see it's a layover effect. Layover occurs when the radar beam reaches the top of a tall feature like a mountain. Here it is shown as a alphabet B. Before it reaches the base, that is shown by A, the return signal from top of the feature will be received before the signal from the bottom. As a result, the top of the feature is displaced towards the radar from its true position on the ground and lays over the base of the feature, that is B dash to A dash. Layover effects on a radar image look very similar to effects due to foreshortening. As with foreshortening, layover is more severe for small incidence angles at the near range of a swath and in mountainous terrain. Both foreshortening and layover results in a radar shadow. Radar shadow occurs when the radar beam is not able to illuminate the ground surface. Shadows occur in the downrange dimension behind vertical features or slopes with steep sides. Since the radar beam does not illuminate the surface, shadowed region will appear dark on an image as no energy is available to be backscattered. As incidence angle increases from near to far range, so will shadow effects as the radar beam looks more and more obliquely at the surface. The image shown illustrates radar shadow effects on the right side of the hillside, which are being eliminated from the left. Now you know that we are using microwave band of electromagnetic spectrum for microwave remote sensing. There are various frequency bands as shown in figure 1. Okay, in microwaves like P band, here you can see P band, L band, S band, C band and X band, which are used for imaging. P has the maximum wavelength. Okay, P has a maximum wavelength, so it can penetrate more than X band, which has the minimum wavelength. So you can see here, okay, P has a maximum wavelength 30 to 100 centimeter and X has 2.4 to 3.75 centimeter. So P can penetrate more into the target compared to X band. Each band gives us different information about the same target. There are different satellites for different bands. The new satellite NISR, which is going to be launched in next year, has two frequencies L and S band. So it can acquire the information of the same geographic location for both the frequencies at the same time. Electromagnetic spectrum have two polarizations as shown in the figure 2. One is horizontally oriented and other is vertically oriented. The polarimetric synthetic aperture radar system use these polarized components of electromagnetic spectrum. There are four combinations of polarization channels. HH stands for horizontal transmit and horizontal receive, which is also known as copolarized or like polarized. So you can see here, the energy is horizontally transmitted, okay, energy is horizontally transmitted and it is received also horizontally. That's why it is known as HH, okay. The next polarization combination is HV, okay. So energy is transmitted horizontally, okay, and received vertically. That is called as HV. This combination is called as cross polarized. VH stands for vertical transmit. So vertically it is transmitted and horizontally it is received. Okay, so that is known as VH. This combination is also known as cross polarized. And the last is VV. VV stands for vertical transmit and vertical receives. So the signal is the vertically oriented signal is sent and vertically oriented signal is received. Okay. If the transmitting and receiving antenna is same, then HV and VH gives the same information. So those systems are known as monostatic systems. Okay. Now there are two more combinations which are used by few satellites called as RH and RV. Okay. RH stands for right circular transmit with linear horizontal receive and RV stands for right circular transmit with linear vertical receive. Now we'll see what kind of polarization combination we should use for different applications. So HH is generally preferred for the study of soil moisture. It is less sensitive to water roughness than VV polarization. Hence, it is suitable for separating sea ice and water and also for ship detection. VV is used for studying the capillary waves on the water surface. So generally it is used for oceanographic applications. HV, that is a cross polarized, is useful for vegetation discrimination and biomass estimation. So with the help of HV, we can identify different types of crops or trees. The HV backscatter from water surface is much lesser than VV backscatter. So the HV channel is useful for detecting targets on the water surface that create multiple scattering, for example, structure of ship and ice deformations. Similarly, can be used to separate broadleaf from grain. Based on which polarization combination used by the satellites, there are three types of satellites. Full polarimetric or quad pole, which uses all four polarization combinations. Okay, so in full pole data we have HH, HV, VH and VV, all the four. Okay, then next is dual polarized. Second is dual pole, in that either we can use a combination of HHHV or HHVV, okay, to collect the information. The third is known as compact polarization. In this, circular polarization is used. Full pole systems are very costly compared to other systems. As mentioned earlier, the radar receives the reflected microwave signals from the target. This reflected microwave signals is known as backscatter. This backscatter is categorized into three types: single bounce or surface bounce, second is double bounce, and third is volume bounce. Generally, the targets like roads, water give single bounce. The man-made targets give double bounce, and the forest trees gives volume bounce. So here in this figure you can see, okay, see here it's a double bounce. Why it is called as double bounce? Because the energy is coming, okay, and bouncing back, okay, double bounce, twice it is bounce back. So generally the man-made targets like buildings will give you this double bounce, okay. Now this here you can see it's like a tree. So if tree has a multiple branches, the energy will bounce back multiple times, right, in all directions. So it is called as volume scattering. And this is like a surface or road or water, okay, single bounce. This backscatter is dependent on various parameters. It depends on the nature of the Earth's surface. Depending upon the surface roughness, the backscatter will vary. The second parameter is angle of incidence of microwave signals. If the angle is small, then the penetration will be more and hence the backscatter will be more. The third parameter is the wavelength of the microwave. The backscatter will vary for different wavelength. If the wavelength is more, the penetration will be more and hence the backscatter will be more. The figure 1 shows the comparison of X and L band. L band has more wavelength than X band. The surface which appears smooth in L band will appear rough in X band due to shorter wavelength. Backscatter also depends on the electrical properties of target. If the wetness of the target is more, the conductivity will be more and hence the dielectric constant will be more and therefore the backscatter will be more. Next, orientation angle of the target. Okay, so the orientation angle of the target with respect to radar flight path also affects the backscatter. For different polarization combination, the backscatter will vary for each target. The physical geometry of the target will also affect the backscatter. So, now you must have understood that it's very difficult to comment that for what type of target, what kind of energy is better. Okay, so we are not just talking about the polarization, we are talking about the polarization, we are talking about the wavelength, then electrical properties of the target, the physical structure of the target, incidence angle. So there are so many parameters which you have to take into consideration before commenting on any result. Here, the comparison of three wavelengths is shown. It is clearly seen that higher the wavelength, penetration is more. So, if we use X band to study forests, then we will get only the information about the forest canopy. On the other hand, if we use L band, we will get information of trunk. So here you can see X band can reach only this part of the tree. Okay, C band has more wavelength compared to X band, so it can cover this area also. And L band has the highest wavelength compared to X and C, so it can reach this till this level. Okay, so from this figure it is very clear that if you have a system with multiple frequencies, like your SAR, your radar has capability of collecting the information of a same geographical area through X band, L band and C band, then you will get a maximum information about the target and the accuracy, classification accuracy will be maximum. The information conveyed will be maximum. Okay. Since we have seen the fundamentals of micro remote sensing, we will see how the image data is represented. The area observed by the radar is represented by a matrix S, which is called as scattering matrix. There are four elements of matrix: SHH, SHH, SVH, SVHV and SVV, which gives complete information about the target. In digital image processing, you have learned RGB images. Those are represented using three matrices. First for red, then second for green and third for blue. Each pixel in RGB image has three values. In pulsar image, each pixel has four values from four polarization combination. Once we get the scattering matrix, we can use mathematical knowledge to derive coherency and covariance matrix. Okay, it's a second order statistic. The coherency matrix generally represented by T. Okay, so this is the coherency matrix T, which is closely related to the physical and geometric properties of the scattering process and thus allows better and direct physical interpretation. So now here you can see, okay, T is formed from a vector called known as Pauli scattering vector. Okay, and how that Pauli vector is calculated with the help of the parameters of scattering matrix. Okay, so once we get this T has how many elements? There are total 9 elements. Okay, T11, 2, T33. So there are 9 elements which we got from the coherency matrix T3. Now here, okay, T11, all diagonal elements, T11, T22 and T33 are real values, okay, real elements, and rest are imaginary, real imaginary, okay. So this T11, T22 and T33 components gives information about single bounce, double bounce and volume scattering, which are generally represented by blue, red and green color respectively. So you can calculate the value. You will get the T11, you will get T22, T33, okay, from HH and HV and VV, okay. And what they have done for just for representation purpose, this is what it is, a single bounce. Now what is single bounce? The backscatter which is received from the surface of the water, okay. So they have given the color blue, okay, and this is a double bounce. What is double bounce? A man-made target. So generally it is represented by pink or red color. And the last is volume. So volume is represented by a green color. Okay. Here you can see a decomposed image of Mumbai area. The green color shows, okay, volume, red or pink shows double bounce and blue color shows a single bounce scattering. So this is for representation, okay. This is the entire image of Mumbai area. Now we'll see one important application of pulsar data. You must be knowing thematic maps which you have studied in geography. The images here show land use land cover map. The different color shows different land covers like agriculture, water, wasteland, urban land and forest land. There are two maps shown, one for the year 2003 and the other for 2013. So, what are we doing here? We are classifying the entire geographical area in various classes and shown in different colors. And we have done it for 2 years. From this, we can find out the change in the land use and land cover. It is clearly seen that the forest area has reduced in 2013 compared to 2003. So, classifying the area into various land covers is one thing and interpreting it is another important aspect. Today we will discuss only the classification part. When we purchase or download a pulsar data, it is a raw data which can converted into scattering matrix, and later this scattering matrix is converted to coherency matrix which is represented by T3. Just now we have discussed. This T3 has 9 elements which are all binary files. By using these binary files, we can classify these images. What is classification? It is a task of assigning a set of given data elements to a given set of labels or classes depending upon some criteria based on similarity or dissimilarity. The major steps of image classification includes feature extraction, selection of training samples, and finally classifying the data using a suitable classification approach. The classification of images helps to monitor the growth of settlement, urban planning and development, crop acreage estimation, deforestation, wetlands, etc. Basically, there are two types of classification. Parametric classification. In this, the classifier assumes that the underlying data follows Gaussian distribution. Example, traditional classifiers like maximum likelihood classifier. Other type is non-parametric classifier. In this, the classifier does not take into consideration the statistical distribution of underlying data. Examples are ANN, support vector machine, decision tree, and random forest classifiers, etc. Earlier, researchers used Wishart supervised classifier to classify pulsar data, but later, from study, it is found that all the classes in the pulsar data may or may not follow Gaussian distribution. So, researchers started using non-parametric classifiers. In supervised classification technique, we give training to the system for known cases, and once system is trained, we give unknown or test cases to classify. It is same as how teacher teaches color to a child. First, she will train a child showing various objects with a same color as red pen, red book and red toy, etc. The child is unaware of what is the meaning of color, but he understands that teacher is showing different objects but saying only one common word, red. After few days, when teacher asks a child with unknown object what is the color of that object, then based on the knowledge acquired, he can identify the color. Similarly, we can train a computer to classify the data based on some predefined criteria. Here in the figure, you can see the image has 4 channels. Each pixel has four gray level values. Based on these values, we can classify whether the pixel belongs to urban or river or forest class. Here, the criteria to classify is the gray level value, but we can use different criteria like texture, mean or standard deviation, etc. The most important step in the supervised classification is selecting the training areas. Training data should be able to represent all the classes and the spectral variability within the class. It should be carefully selected based on fieldwork and examination of the image. Training areas can be modified iteratively if necessary to improve the classification accuracy. And it is always better to take the samples for some same class from the different geographical locations. The most important thing is the collection of the ground truth. Now, there may be many questions in your mind. What is the collection of ground truth and how to do it and why it is required? Okay. To train the classifier with appropriate data, ground truth collection is important, else the training will be wrong and so the classification. When you develop a classifier and compute classification accuracy, then you should know that whatever you are claiming does exist on land. For example, if there are 100 pixels belong to water class and your classifier says that 90 belongs to water class, then you have to verify that the 90 pixels which you are claiming are actually belongs to water on the earth's surface or it is the misclassification by the classifier. It may happen that the pixel belongs to wetland is classified as water. Hence, collection of ground truth is very important step. Now we will see how to do fieldwork. This is the optical image of Mumbai area. Various land covers are shown here like salt pans, grasslands, mangroves, forests, settlement, etc. For collection of ground truth, you must go to the location with handheld GPS. You must write the lat longs and take photos with geotagging. While doing my research work at IIT Bombay, I had gone to various places to collect the ground truth. These are the photographs taken during fieldwork. You may ask me, when should we go for fieldwork? We must go for the fieldwork when the satellite pass is there. If the data is collected today by the satellite and you take the ground truth 2 days after or before the pass, then the natural targets like wetlands, water bodies, etc. may look different. So it is very important to collect the ground truth on the same day when the satellite pass is there. So these are the few places where I went for a field work, like a Powai Lake, Tansa Lake. So here you can see it's a sweetwater lake. In micro remote sensing or the micro data is able to classify the saline water and non-saline water, that is sweet water. Similarly, here you can see on the left hand side, this is a slum. Okay, so slum will appear, gives a different signature in micro remote data, and this is again a settlement only. Okay, then these are the refineries. So refinery will give the different type of signature in microdata. So that's why I told you that in micro remote sensing, each target on the Earth's surface has a unique signature, and then it becomes possible to classify each and every type of settlement or each and every type of target on the Earth. So these are a few water bodies and forest area where I went for field work. These are the grasslands. That's it. Okay. And this is finally this is a classified image of Mumbai. Okay. And right now I have shown only for the four classes, that is water, mangrove, urban, and no, not for four classes, for five classes: water, mangroves, urban, wetland, and forest. After the classification, we must compute classification accuracy for the training as well as test areas. Most commonly we use confusion matrix to compute the classification accuracy. So in short, the entire flow of SAR data processing is shown here in this block diagram. The SAR data can be of SLC, that is single loop complex, or MLC, that is multi-loop complex type. Here I have mentioned various sensors: ALOS Pulsar 1, then Radasat 2 C-band, Terasar X band, Envisat C-band, Resat 1 hybrid pole type. This is CERC having C-band and L-band data, on which I had worked during my PhD. Now, as mentioned earlier, ALOS 2, Sentinel-1 and UAV SAR data is also available. After acquiring the data from these sensors, we must apply multi-loop factor if the data is in SLC format. This multi-loop factor can be calculated by using resolution and incidence angle. The NEST software can compute this factor automatically. Multi-loop processing can be used to produce a product with nominal image pixel size. Multi-looking is averaging over range and or azimuth resolution cells, improving radiometric resolution but degrading spatial resolution. As a result, the image will have less noise and approximate square pixel spacing after being converted from slant range to ground range. Multi-looking can be an optional step. Due to time constraints, I cannot cover this part in detail here. After multi-looking, we get coherency matrix T. To remove the noise, which is known as speckle in microwave data, filters can be applied on matrix T. There are many filters available. The performance of refined Lie is comparatively better than other filters. It removes the speckle from the homogeneous areas and preserves the edges. The next step after filtering is applying target decomposition. In short, target decomposition means decomposing the image into single, double and volume bounds. There are various decomposition techniques available. The latest decomposition technique is Gulab Singh's 7-component decomposition. And the last step after decomposition is applying classifiers. The classification can be applied directly on the coherency matrix T or can be applied on the decomposed image. As mentioned in previous slide, we must compute the classification accuracy and validate our claims by comparing with ground truth, which is acquired during the fieldwork. These are the SAR systems with various polarizations and frequencies which are available right now. Okay, so here you can see this is a Sentinel-1A, 1B and this UAV SAR. These two are freely available. You have to just log in, create your login and download. So this is from European Space Agency, Rome, and this is from NASA. Okay, this is an airborne radar. This is airborne and this is a spaceborne. Okay, what is the difference between this? This is a C-band and it has a multi-frequency band. Okay, resolution is very good. You can download and start working. Other remaining all like Radasat 2, Allos Pulsar 1, 2, they are very expensive. Now, almost for one scene you have to, they cost you around 1 lakh rupee. If you want to work in this domain, then these are few links from where you can download the data. Pulsar Pro and Nest are two free software developed by European Space Agency, Rome, which can be used to process the SAR data. And there is one Python library which can be also used to process the SAR data using Python. I can understand that those who are new to microwave remote sensing, for them, all these concepts are very difficult to understand. Today's webinar was just to create the awareness about this domain. I have tried to cover maximum concepts in 1 hour. Actually, I know I cannot give justice to the topic in such a short span of time. So if you want to work in this domain and if you have any difficulties, you can always contact me through my mail. So that's it from my side. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, ma'am.
I know I cannot give justice to the topic. Good. Yes, yes, Ishidas.
Okay.
Hello.
That was a nice session, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah. On the comments box, there were some questions which were posted by the students or faculty members. I'll just put forth across you.
Okay.
Okay. The first question is,
Yes.
Do satellite image processing require cloud computing?
Yeah, basically cloud computing is the online on-demand availability of computer system resources, especially data storage or computing power. So if you don't have that in your machine, you can always go for cloud computing. So it's up to your need, user's requirement. If they want, they can go for cloud computing, but it's not necessary.
Okay. The next question is, what is the procedure to make lineament map from satellite image?
Okay. Basically, a lineament is a linear feature in a landscape. Okay, which is a expression of an underlying geological structure. So, if you see the literature, or today also people generally prefer using optical images, but only satellite images will not help. They, along with the satellite images, they need information of topography, or you can say digital elevation. So people can generally pre-processing is done on the satellite images. Then you can use edge detectors like a Canny algorithm and all to detect. And then you can take SRTM data. SRTM means Shuttle Radar Topography Mission, JPL NASA. They give the topographic information and all everything together you have to use to find out the lineament. So generally GIS software like ArcGIS and all they use to do this.
Okay, ma'am. And the next question is, what type of data format is used for the input data given to the classifiers? Basically,
Yeah. For microwave remote sensing. Hello.
I think so. She's dealing with
For pulsar data.
basically, the feature extraction part of it, I think.
Yeah, I can't hear. Actually, there is a lot of echo I can hear. Okay, so for microwave data, the data is having a CEOS format, but you can convert that into binary format. It's a float data type, and the features are in float data type, which we give it to the classifier and perform it. Actually, if you can convert any float also into UINT, that is unsigned integer, or JPEG 2000, but as soon as you convert it, you are going to lose the information. So better not to convert that from one data type to another data type. You should use the binary information as it is. And it becomes difficult because the softwares which we have, MATLAB and all, that the built-in functions, they expect the data in terms of UINT, that is unsigned integer. So you have to write your own program for this binary data type.
The next one, how do we differentiate and rectify false positive prediction and ground truth data?
Yeah. So in any classifier, when a programmer or a expert comment that my classifier is giving 90% accuracy, okay, any algorithm, if you give any sort of input, you will get some output, okay, but you have to go to the actual area with the GPS on your in your hand and check at what lat long, what kind of land cover is there. Suppose I am claiming that this particular area is a water, and if it is on the earth, instead of water it's a wetland, okay, and my classifier is classifying that as a water, and if I don't go to the field work and I accept that as it is, then whatever result I am claiming, that is going to be wrong. So whenever you get a result, or before giving a training to the classifier, you have to verify whatever input you are giving to the classifier, whether it is actually there on the earth or not.
Fine. The last question, ma'am. How to get images of same place by different satellites?
Okay, so as I mentioned in my presentation, currently there are two satellites like Sentinel-1 by European Space Agency. Okay, that data is freely available. You can go on their site, you have to register, and you can download any area, any data free of cost. And for you will get a time series data. You can download for the different dates of the same area, but it's a C-band data and UAVSAR. Okay, that is, but that data is available only on US area. It's not available on our Asian region. So you can download that data, but they have multi-frequency data. You can select P band, L band, C band of the same geographical location. Only thing for ground truth, it will be a problem. Many areas, ground truth may be available on the internet, or you can, for time being, for a study purpose, you can refer Google Earth image of that particular date.
Okay, ma'am. I think some more questions have come up. How to get optical and microwave images of same place for free download? So a similar kind of question related to it.
Yeah. So it's a good question because as I explained in the presentation, SAR data has a disadvantage of foreshortening and layover. Okay, so forest area and hilly regions, optical data is better compared to microwave. So you can fuse both the data, and you can synergy of optical and microwave will give you the better results. So again, I am telling you, Sentinel-1 is C-band microwave data, and Sentinel-2 is a multispectral optical data. You can get both the things of the same area and you can work on it.
Okay.
So Sentinel-2 is for optical, Sentinel-1 is for microwave.
Fine. Okay, the next question, ma'am. What are the required pre-processing steps used before getting the raw data, raw signal?
Yeah. So raw data, whenever you download, okay, as I told you, from Sentinel you can download. You will get, if it is a quad pole data, you will get HHHV, VHVP channels. From that, you can have, you can use Pulsar Pro. Pulsar Pro is a free software developed by European Space Agency, and Nest also is there. I have mentioned on my presentation. So you can give these channels, 4 channels, HHHV, VHVP to that, and then there is a procedure. You can extract the coherency or covariance matrix. That coherency and covariance matrix will be in the dot binary. It's a binary file, and you can process using Pulsar Pro also. There are many classifiers available in Pulsar Pro. Decompositions are also available in Pulsar Pro, or otherwise you have to write your own code to process that binary data.
Okay. The next one, can we find underground features like, oil reserves using SAR?
Yeah, so penetration is, SAR has many applications in all the domains. Penetration is more for higher wavelength. As I told you that it can penetrate the targets. For example, if you want to find out water bodies beneath the forest, which is not possible in optical, okay, but the microwaves can penetrate through the trees and find out. You can find out the water bodies. Similarly, for oil and oil also, we can use pulsar data along with pulsar. There is another technology called as INSAR, for INSAR, that is for INSAR INSAR techniques. There we use phase information of 2 different signals and can use it for many things, like calculating the thickness of ice, or you can find out the height of particular object and many other things. So for oil also you can use it. Oil extra means oil on water bodies also you can find out whether it is there.
That's it, ma'am, with the question and answer session. It was really nice to have an interaction with you. Thanks for answering the questions from the comment section. I think you've answered all the questions which were posted by the students and the faculty members in the comment section.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Now I request our IEEE Student Branch Treasurer, Mr. Shivam Bale, to kindly propose the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the organizing team, it's my privilege to say a big thank you to our today's speaker, Dr. Ma'am Varsha Durkar, who has delivered this webinar on satellite image processing in her best way possible. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation. I request my audience to kindly check the comment section for the feedback form and fill it within an hour to generate your e-certificate. Kindly note, the registrants will receive the link for the next webinar by tonight. Kindly note that tomorrow's webinar timings will be from 10:30 to 11:45. Thank you.